The coast of North Carolina has many faces. My first memories of this area come from the early 1950s, when North Carolina's population was barely 4 million people, and today we're nearing 10 million. With rising seas and a changing coastline, more people are visiting North Carolina beaches than ever before. Decisions are being made about our coastal ecology and economy that will affect generations to come. Today on Exploring North Carolina, we are going to examine North Carolina's two coasts, the coast we were given by nature and the coast we are creating. To examine difficult questions facing North Carolina policymakers, Exploring North Carolina went to some of the people who know our coastal zone best. They are Stan Riggs, coastal geologist and university distinguished professor at East Carolina. Stan has studied North Carolina's coastal plain and oceanfront for more than 50 years. Bland Simpson, Keenan Distinguished Professor of English and Creative Writing at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, grew up on the Albemarle Sound and has spent much of his life writing about and exploring the North Carolina coast. Walker Golder is Audubon, North Carolina's Director of Coast and Marshes. An ornithologist with a marine biology background, Walker grew up and lives on our south coast. Finally, we will talk with Derb Carter, Director of the Chapel Hill office of the Southern Environmental Law Center. For many years, Derb has worked to protect the North Carolina coast and its ecosystems and the rights of North Carolina citizens who use the coast. In several past episodes of Exploring North Carolina, we have told you about our coast's tumultuous past. You have heard one phrase used by many guests to explain the climate, geology, and ecology of our coastal region, and that phrase is dynamic change. Stan Riggs explains.
This incredible coastal system is a natural resource system that's unequaled in the world. North Carolina's system is awesome, not just for its water resources, its marsh, its fisheries, and so forth, but now it's used by humans. We live in it, we are part of it, and we have to make that migration into the coastal system on sort of the coastal system's terms. We have to recognize what's going on. We are part of that system, and we have to be tuned into how that system's working. This is a changing, dynamic system that we have to learn to live with. We can't just approach it with the idea that we can engineer it in place, because it's not going to stay in place. It never has, and it never will.
Before I ask our guest about the effects of hardened structures, terminal groins, seawalls, and sandbag fortifications, I wanted to know why people, North Carolinians and visitors alike, gravitate to the North Carolina shore.
I grew up on the southern coast of North Carolina, and I think the thing that makes the coast attractive varies with the individual. For me, it's such an appealing place. I think the beauty of the place brings people from all walks of life to the coast of North Carolina because it is special, it's diverse, it has something for everyone regardless of your interest, whether it's boating or sailing or surfing or swimming or fishing or enjoying birds or other wildlife or just a simple walk on the beach. There is a nurturing quality to the coast that helps enrich our lives. I think it certainly enriches mine, and I believe that that nurturing part of the coast, the salt air and salt water, keeps people coming back.
Our beaches and coastline in North Carolina are undoubtedly one of our greatest natural assets and attractions for tourism and even people who grew up in the state like me who take a traditional family vacation to the beach. it's just an incredible system. You've got the ocean, you've got the barrier islands, behind that you've got the marshes and the estuaries. It's all interconnected by inlets. It's extremely productive, abundant wildlife, places you can go and get away from cities and everyday life. It's just an outstanding, incredible natural resource for the state of North Carolina.
The draw is the pull of the sea, the mother of us all, and the wildness of it, the wildness of the coastline, the unpredictability. I mean, we know the tides are predictable, but how the surf is going to be today or tomorrow as opposed to today, it's the wild natural world is what has always pulled people to come out here.
Our guests understand the connection between productive ecosystems, natural beaches, and a productive economy.
Well, the economy in coastal North Carolina really came about based on those productive natural resources that we have. Traditionally, it was commercial fishing, which depended on the productivity of the estuary, the connection to the ocean through the inlets. We're transitioning now into more of a tourism-based economy that depend on the beaches and the recreational opportunities, sport fishing, all those things that attract people to the beach. But underlying it all is that incredibly productive natural system that's comprised of the ocean, the beaches, the interconnected inlets that reach back into our estuaries and wetlands.
You know, the North Carolina coast is, without a doubt, one of the most special places on the planet. And the economy of the coast has grown, and the economy of the coast depends on the very dynamic nature of the coast. It depends on healthy beaches, and it depends on healthy marshes. The marshes support our seafood industry. They support our recreation industry and tourism industry. Without healthy beaches and without healthy marshes, the economy of the coast suffers, and all the people who depend on that economy will suffer as well.
The wild, natural, wide open coast, looking down that beautiful unspoiled beach for as far as you can see, this has been one of the main identifiers, not just for the coastal region, but for the state of North Carolina. And if and as we alter that and more engineer it and interrupt that quite literal vision, we're very definitely changing the sense of place, the character of the place.
What policies and changes in engineering practices on our coast have drawn the concerns of many North Carolinians who depend on our coastal resources for their recreation and their livelihood?
Back in the 80s, state government agencies, public organizations all got together after watching what was happening along our barrier islands and made a very strong decision that North Carolina's shoreline should not be hardened, ocean shorelines, that they were too important and too valuable a resource. We should acknowledge the fact that there is change and allow some of this change to happen. And so we passed regulations and ultimately a law that said no hardening of our shorelines except under special conditions, and the state allowed a variance for certain types of things such as protecting a port. But this was a very strong felt opinion of all the scientific community, the state agencies, and public. And it was received by everybody. Everybody accepted that this is the way North Carolina should go forward. That is now, that attitude is changing. We did lose houses back then. We had ways to move houses, and we moved a lot of houses. Some houses fell down, some roads fell in, but we worked with that. In the past, we used to renourish 15, 20 miles of beaches in North Carolina. Today there's 125 miles of beach communities that want sand in order to try to maintain the status quo. Well, there isn't that much sand. If they're in trouble, the best sand's already on the beach.
Well, we're facing now in North Carolina what every state along the Atlantic coast and really every coast in the world is facing to some extent is accelerating sea level rise. The ocean is rising. There's no dispute about that. You can argue the rate, but it's rising. And that is having an impact on our beaches where the ocean is trying to move in, and we've built structures. What we've been doing in North Carolina is responding to that. Recently, we've taken a move that is pretty drastic steps compared to what we decided was the appropriate approach in the past. In the past in North Carolina, we adopted a policy that I would call retreat and soft solutions. Retreat meaning limit the size of structures so when the ocean comes in, there might be some opportunity to relocate them, move them back in response to the ocean rising. Soft solutions, in that category, I would put sand management, actually doing what's called beach replenishment. The problem there is we're running out of sand or high quality sand to do that. Now we're turning to really what are called hard solutions. The state legislature recently basically repealed the prohibition on hardened structures to allow what are called terminal groins, which are really seawalls that are built at the inlet face in hopes of reducing the amount of beach encroachment that's occurring or inlet encroachment on private property. And now we're going to allow 4 projects. Now we're moving to allow 6 projects. So we're clearly now starting down a path of hardening our beaches. Similarly, in the past, we've allowed private landowners when their home is imminently threatened by erosion. I mean, it's really, the berm is almost at the foundation, to temporarily put in sandbags or sandbag walls to protect it for a very limited amount of time while we come up with a softer solution of beach nourishment or replenishment. Now those have in essence become permanent because the state is really not requiring them to be removed, even though there was a commitment they would be removed. And you have areas now like North Topsail Beach, which there is no beach. It's literally a sandbag wall that extends for much of the length of the whole area of North Topsail Beach. So we're really starting down a path now of hardening that I think is really bringing us to a critical decision point about the future of the North Carolina beaches.
No business owner or homeowner wants to lose beachfront or be threatened by a rising sea. Unfortunately, the hardened fixes, terminal groins, rock walls, and sandbags often create unintended consequences for beachfront owners and their neighbors alike. Are there any winners when such structures are put in place? Bland Simpson and Derb Carter give us their thoughts.
Are we setting up a raft of unintended consequences that people are going to be surprised about? Absolutely we are. The live inlet, you can look at Rich Inlet, but you can look at a lot of them. The live living inlet with big tidal flats and all that habitat. Put a 1/4 mile long stone and metal wall there, and that's gone. That habitat is gone. And put that wall there, and we're going to scallop out the beach because of the interruption of the flow of sand. A bunch of scalloped curves in the beach where some have a wider beach and some have narrower, where we're used to this long, broad strand. That's a big change. That's a huge change. That's not the kind of coast we've had and are used to.
Rich Inlet is a very stable inlet which has appeared on coastal maps in the same place for 200 years. Even aerial photographs over many decades show little change in location. Should this inlet and others be hardened?
Because other states have gone down this path of allowing hardened structures on the beaches in an attempt to prevent the perceived threat of erosion, we've got a pretty good history of what the effects of these projects can be. And generally the attempt is to build a hardened structure to try to protect property at a particular location. Often that involves trying to trap sand at that location by building a perpendicular wall or a groin or some other type of structure. That sand normally would move somewhere else. So what happens, because there's only a certain amount of sand in the system, is you get erosion at another location. And then the response there is to protect that property, you also build a hardened structure. And eventually down the road, after many years, you look back and you don't have a beach. You've got a hardened structure the entire length of the beach. These are kind of unintended consequences because oftentimes it's not thought about adequately when you do that, but it's a very predictable consequence from the track record of these approaches to trying to prevent damage to private property on our beaches.
For Derb Carter and Walker Golder, the loss of beach, tidal flats near inlets, and productive marsh also have a dramatic effect on bird life and marine life.
Well, there are many species of birds and other animals that, as incredible as it sounds, depend entirely for their complete life cycle, really for their existence on that narrow edge between the low tide and the high tide. That's where they get their food, their sustenance. Many of them nest immediately adjacent to those areas, and they'll sit and wait on the beaches until the tide goes down. And they've got 6 hours to feed, and that's really the only place they feed. So it's incredible the amount of species and the number of species that are tied directly to such a narrow area. Unfortunately, it's also an area under a tremendous amount of pressure from people because we enjoy that area too. To recreate on the beaches, we're building houses on our beaches, and more of those species are getting confined not only to that narrow edge, but to limited areas where they can be away from human disturbance.
When we build a rock wall at an inlet, or we build a big sandbag wall, some sort of hard structure, we stop that natural dynamic process that sustains those mud flats and sand flats that these birds depend on and that other wildlife depend on too. And when the habitat disappears for these birds, and it does when you build hard structures at inlets, the birds disappear.
When terminal groins and seawalls are built on the ocean front and the beach disappears, the rights of all North Carolina citizens are impacted. No one knows the public trust doctrine better than Derb Carter.
So under the public trust doctrine, the beaches belong to the public, and the government, even acting ostensibly on behalf of the public, cannot take those rights away in an unreasonable manner or unless it's really for a public purpose. And I think that's the real key decision that's going to be made in North Carolina is at what point are these actions in hardening the shorelines, destroying our beaches in some circumstances, really for a public purpose or simply to protect some private property that may be threatened by accelerating sea level rise or erosion on the beaches. Our courts have traditionally been very strong in terms of North Carolina having a strong public trust doctrine and protecting these public resources. We see our other branches of government moving to take actions that are in some ways eroding that public interest in our beaches by allowing activities that are clearly just to protect private property.
Exploring North Carolina is concerned about the environment of our state and about the ability of all citizens to access and use public lands. We also believe North Carolinians should be able to make a good living within our coastal zone. I ask our distinguished guests, all experts on North Carolina's coastal region, their thoughts about the issues confronting policymakers and all North Carolinians living at the water's edge.
We have to, in this state, come to terms with the enormous social and financial problem that we have on the coast, which is how much treasure has been poured into harm's way. And we've got to put some of our most creative minds, legal and engineering and political, to work on how we're going to help coastal communities, in some sense or another, back up. There's going to be retreat. It's already happening. And in 20, 30, 50 years, we know that's going to happen. And we can't just abandon people and say, well, good luck, here are a few sandbags. We have to help each other do better than we're doing. We just have to.
I definitely believe that there are alternative ways that we can economically develop this coastal system in a more viable, that can produce a viable economy and protect that resource base that economy is based on.
Like many North Carolinians, I grew up going to the beach every summer with my family. You could walk pretty much up and down the beach in every direction as far as you wanted to go until you reached an inlet. You'd see abundant wildlife. You could fish right in the surf. There are places on the North Carolina coast now that you can't walk on the beach because it's been replaced with some type of hardened structure, or there are sandbags, and literally you can't walk, certainly at high tide, because there is no beach to walk on. That's not the kind of beach that I envision as one that is one that's enjoyable to go to, that you want to take your family to, that long term is in North Carolina's economic interest to maintain. And we really need to think very hard about this path that we're on.
The solutions to a changing coastline are unclear, but the discussion, that conversation needs to happen. And we need to begin to think about how we coexist with a dynamic coast. But the conversation about what we do in the next 5, 10, 20, even 50 years needs to start soon. And it needs to include how we coexist with a changing coastline.
The questions before us are not easy. When and under what circumstances should we allow hardened structures along our beachfronts and in our inlets? We agree with our guest that the time to start talking is now, so that our children and grandchildren will have the same opportunity to a quality beach experience or to earn a living on the North Carolina coast that we have been given. And I learned this while exploring North Carolina.